Right. My refutation speech is that the claim of fact private schools are more efficient than public schools. Secondary claims that where private education produces superior results than public schools, private education produces significant advantages for many families. And the last one was private education closes the achievement gap. The first question I have for the statement that Brandy makes is, what does she mean by efficient? Let me give you the definition of efficiency, and we'll see if it's actually efficient. The Webster Dictionary defines efficient as effective operation as measured by comparison of production with cost, as in energy, time, and money. Now, if this is efficient, Now, if this is what efficient is, then private schools are not more efficient than public schools. They cost a lot of money. According to the National Association of Independent Schools, the median tuition for private schools in the year 2008-2009 was $17,000 a year. They're more time-consuming, and they require more energy from students. So in no way are they more efficient than public schools. The first set of data that is used to back up her first argument is that private education produces superior results than public schools, and the data that she collected was from 2002, 10 years prior. A lot can happen in 10 years, including changing of the tests, which they do, different requirements, which there are, and new technology. The data does not say where it was collected, such as citywide, statewide, or nationally-wide. Different states have different requirements than others. She also says that private schools have religious requirements, but this does not affect test results. The secondary claim, Brandy says private education produces significant advantages for many families. She makes a claim that students that feel safe in school do better in school. And she makes the claim that being in private school, kids feel safer. Why does someone in private school feel safer than someone in public school? Well, if it's because there's gates, walls, then I can agree with that. I would feel safer too. However, public schools are also gated and have walls. So in this instance, they're the same. Also, safety can come from what neighborhood the school is in, not necessarily that it is public or private. The last claim Brandy makes is that private education closes the achievement gap. She says that standardized tests measure America's youth preparedness to meet their citizenship responsibilities. This is not true at all. The test measures math skills, comprehension skills, science skills, and reading skills. None of these have anything to do with citizen responsibilities. Brandy goes on to say that gaps are narrowed in public school or private schools with majorities and minorities. If anything, the gap is widened. Public school percentages of race among students, 58% white, 20% Hispanic, 10% black. Private schools, 74% white, 10% Hispanic, and 9% black. And each of them had about 1 or 2% of Asian. These stats were from the 2009 National Center for Education, and they were dated 2009. So like I said, private schools do not close the gap. If anything, they're creating a gap between minorities and majority of students. In closing, I would like to say, private schools are not more efficient than public schools.
Right, the claims ID'd pretty clearly. The argument about what is effective is an okay challenge if there's some doubt about what effectiveness means. I think you've got an interesting argument here if effectiveness was unclear from the advocate's point of view, but they seem to be focusing mainly on achievement, for instance, either successful completion of programs, matriculation or an articulation to other schools, reduction of problems. I think that you've got a reasonable counterclaim on the notion of cost, and that might be important in a policy context. I'm not sure, though, that it does much to undermine the main supporting points that the advocate is talking about here. It kind of introduces a rebuttal issue, which would be more important in a policy discussion. As you get to each of the individual points, you signpost them relatively well. The challenge on the first point is mostly about the data and how old that information is, and that there have been changes and so on and so forth, which are all reasonable presses, but you could have made any of those presses immediately after the speech was presented the first time, and it seems like the intervening 2 weeks should have been able to develop a little bit more information. On the argument about advantages for families, I think that you're doing some equivocation here in defining what safe is. I don't remember exactly what the evidence was that the advocate used in their presentation, but I doubt very much that it had to do with walls and gates, and it probably had a lot more to do with the students feeling threatened inside the schools, for instance, whether it is bullying or actual physical attacks. And I think if you could show, for instance, that public schools do a relatively good job at maintaining security, that would be a better answer than this kind of diversionary equivocation argument that you're making here. I don't think that helps you very much. On the achievement gap argument, I think you've got a good argument about creating a gap. I'm not sure it's an argument about the achievement gap, but the notion that in essence that private schools are going to create some kind of additional gap between for instance, all the groups that are mentioned and other groups because they're being excluded from these opportunities, because they're less likely to get those particular benefits. I think that's a reasonable challenge, and it's a good issue to raise in the context of the larger question. I'm not sure it addresses the specific point that the advocate's talking about there, and I think there might be some good arguments to make on that. All right, you did present some statistics at the end. I think they need to be clarified a little bit more so that your argument could be a little bit sharper. All right, thank you.